They say money changes people, that it reveals who you really are. But no one ever warns you about what happens when you get money you never asked for, money you never earned. My name is Daniel Cole. I was 27 years old when I inherited $12 million from a man I didn't even know, and within 2 years, I had lost every single penny. Not just through greed, but through disasters so unbelievable that even now, I struggle to understand how it all went so wrong. This is not a story about how money made my life better. This is a story about how it destroyed me. Before all of this, my life was painfully ordinary. I worked as a junior mechanical engineer in a small firm. My days were filled with spreadsheets, endless CAD revisions, and the occasional coffee break where I stared out the window and wondered if life would ever feel different. I wasn't miserable exactly, just stuck, paycheck to paycheck living, student loans breathing down my neck. A cramped apartment that smelled faintly of my neighbor's cigarettes and burnt eggs. My biggest splurge was ordering pizza on a Friday night. That was my life. And then the phone call came. It was my mother. She sounded nervous, almost shaken, when she told me the news. My biological grandfather had passed away. Now, I need to explain something. I never knew my grandfather. In fact, I barely knew he existed. My mother had been estranged from him since before I was born. All I knew was that he had been some kind of oil tycoon, the kind of man who made enemies faster than friends. To me, he was just a ghost, a name mentioned once or twice at family gatherings with a bitter shake of the head. So when my mom told me he had left something behind for me, I assumed it would be symbolic. A watch, maybe some old family heirloom. I couldn't have been more wrong. A week later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office, staring at a document that would change my life forever. The lawyer, a thin man with half-moon glasses and a voice like sandpaper, slid a folder across the desk. "Mr. Cole," he said, adjusting his tie, "your grandfather designated you as the primary beneficiary of his estate. After taxes and legal fees, the total inheritance comes to $12 million. I laughed, actually laughed, right there in his office. I thought it was a cruel joke, some kind of scam. But then the lawyer handed me a packet of bank transfer confirmations, all with my name printed on them. My hands started to shake. I had never seen more than a few $1,000s in my account at one time, and suddenly, I was worth 8 figures. I didn't hear much else after that. The lawyer kept talking, something about trusts, something about assets, but it all blurred together. All I could think about was this tidal wave of money that had just crashed into my life. When I finally walked out of that office, the city looked different. Brighter, louder. Every billboard screamed opportunity. Every stranger looked like a future friend. My old life, the job, the debt, the stress, felt like a bad dream I had just woken up from. If I had just walked away then, tucked the money into safe investments, and lived quietly, maybe this story would have ended differently. But money doesn't just sit quietly. It whispers. It tempts. And before long, it consumes. The first few weeks after the inheritance felt like a dream. I quit my job immediately. My boss didn't even seem surprised, just jealous. My coworkers whispered about me as I left the office, boxes packed, never to return. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bound by deadlines, rent payments, or the gnawing fear of an empty bank account. My first purchase was ridiculous. A brand new penthouse in the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, a balcony that looked out over the skyline. It cost me nearly $4 million, and I wired the payment like it was nothing more than buying groceries. Then came the car. Not one car, 4. A Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a Porsche, and a Tesla Plaid. I told myself I needed options, like I was picking outfits instead of 6-figure machines. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years started crawling out of the woodwork. Suddenly, I was the guy everyone wanted to know. Dinners, parties, club nights that blurred into dawn. I was buying $10,000 bottles of champagne like they were water, and I loved it. For once, I wasn't Daniel the overworked engineer. I was Daniel the millionaire, Daniel the untouchable. But money does more than buy things. It buys illusions. Illusions of control, of safety, of invincibility. And that's when I made my second mistake. Investments. Everyone had advice. Put your money in crypto, one friend told me. Another swore up and down that real estate was the only way to go. Then there was the guy I met at a private poker table, slick suit, gold watch, who promised he had access to can't-lose stock tips. I listened to all of them. Within 3 months, I had sunk nearly $5 million into half-baked schemes, shady startups, and hype coins that promised to revolutionize the world. I told myself it was just the beginning of my empire, that I was building something bigger than myself. And when some of those investments started to collapse, I shrugged it off. Because I still had millions. I still had the cars, the penthouse, the parties. But here's the thing about living like a king. It becomes normal. The thrill wears off. Suddenly, that $10,000 bottle of champagne feels ordinary. The Ferrari feels slow. The penthouse feels quiet. So you start chasing bigger thrills, riskier ones. And that's when gambling entered my life. It started innocently enough. One night, a friend invited me to a casino. Just for fun, he said. I figured, why not? I had the money, and I'd never really gambled before. Walking into that casino was like stepping into another world. The sounds of slot machines, the smell of cigarette smoke mixed with expensive cologne, the flashing lights. I felt alive, like I belonged there. I sat down at a blackjack table with a casual $10,000 in chips. My hands shook with excitement as the cards were dealt. And wouldn't you know it, I won. Then I won again. And again. That night, I walked out $80,000 richer. It wasn't the money that hooked me. It was the rush. The idea that I could make more in 2 hours than I used to make in a year. Soon, the casino wasn't just a night out. It was a routine. I was showing up 3, 4 times a week. Roulette, poker, baccarat, you name it. Some nights, I'd win hundreds of thousands. Other nights, I'd lose just as much. But every loss came with the same thought. I'll make it back tomorrow. Then came the private tables. High stakes. $10,000 just to sit down. These weren't your average gamblers. These were sharks. Men with stone faces and women who could bluff like professional actors. And I thought I could hang with them. In 1 week alone, I burned through nearly $2 million. I told myself it was fine. I told myself it was just entertainment. I told myself I had more money than I'd ever need. But here's the truth about gambling. The house always wins. And deep down, I knew it. But I couldn't stop. I started borrowing against my investments, liquidating assets, even selling off the cars I swore I'd never part with. Every time I thought I hit rock bottom, I found a new low. And then came Vegas. A friend, a real snake, though I didn't see it at the time, invited me to fly out for a high roller weekend. First-class flights, luxury hotels, everything comped if we agreed to gamble. How could I say no? Vegas was a blur of flashing lights, endless drinks, and hollow laughter. I remember one night vividly. I sat at a craps table, sweating, shaking, with over $500,000 in chips stacked in front of me. One roll of the dice could double it, or wipe it clean. I lost. And for the first time, I felt real fear. $500,000 gone in less than a minute. But the scariest part? I didn't stop. I kept playing. I borrowed from people I shouldn't have borrowed from. I thought I could outsmart luck. By the end of the weekend, I had lost nearly $3 million. And that was the moment my life started to truly unravel. Because money wasn't the only thing I lost in Vegas. I lost myself. After Vegas, something in me shifted. I couldn't just gamble for fun anymore. I needed it. The casino wasn't just entertainment. It was my battlefield, my office, my obsession. But I started noticing something. The casinos weren't treating me like a winner anymore. They were treating me like a whale. A prize catch. Every week, I got calls from hosts. Slick-talking casino reps promising me free hotel stays, private jets, luxury dinners, all if I just came back and played. And I did. Every time. But the more I gambled, the more I lost. I started chasing losses. If I dropped $100,000 one night, I told myself I'd double it the next. If I lost a car's worth of chips at poker, I'd throw in a house's worth to try and win it back. And that's how you go from rich to broke faster than you ever thought possible. When the casinos became too familiar, I turned to online betting. Sportsbooks, poker apps, even shady websites that weren't legal in the US. I was betting on everything: football, horse racing, tennis matches I didn't even watch. I remember losing $40,000 on a Korean baseball game, a sport I didn't even understand. It didn't matter what the event was. The act of betting, of risking, became the only thing that gave me a rush. And then came the loan sharks. It started with credit cards, maxing out one after another. Then I started borrowing from friends, lying to them about business deals that just needed a little cash to get off the ground. When that wasn't enough, I went to places no one should ever go. Men with tattoos up their necks, who smiled without their eyes, who charged interest rates that could bury you alive. I owed one of them $250,000 at one point. Do you know what that feels like? To owe someone who doesn't send reminders in the mail, but instead shows up at your door at midnight, asking about their money? But I didn't stop. One night, I wired $50,000 into an offshore casino site. It was 2 in the morning. I was sitting alone in my penthouse, staring at the screen as the digital roulette wheel spun. Red, black, red, black, lose, lose, lose. Within an hour, it was gone. $50,000. Gone to pixels. I slammed my laptop shut and stared at the city skyline, the lights blurring through my tears. And in that moment, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't gambling to win anymore. I was gambling because I didn't know how to stop. I was addicted, but admitting that to myself didn't stop me. If anything, it pushed me further. I started flying internationally, Macau, Monte Carlo, anywhere with a high-stakes table and a promise of easy money. I told myself I was just on vacation, just exploring the world. But in truth, I was running. Running from the debt collectors, from my dwindling accounts, from the reality that my inheritance was disappearing one chip at a time. And every time I lost, I swore it was the last time. That I'd walk away tomorrow. That I'd get clean. But tomorrow never came. Because the truth is, gamblers don't quit when they're losing. They quit when they're broke. At first, I thought I could control it. I told myself I'd gamble only what I could afford to lose. But when you're an addict, that phrase doesn't mean anything. I began liquidating. The Ferrari? Gone. I told people I sold it because I was bored of it. But the truth was I owed 70 grand to a man who promised to break my legs if I didn't pay up. The Lamborghini? Same story. Even the penthouse, the crown jewel of my spending spree, became a bargaining chip. I refinanced it, borrowed against it, anything I could to get more cash in my hands, more chips on the table. But desperation makes you sloppy. I started scheming. Fake investment pitches to old college buddies. Telling my parents I needed bridge loans for business opportunities. I lied. I manipulated. I dragged people into my downward spiral just so I could stay afloat one more day. And every dollar I stole, every lie I told, ended up in the same place. Across a felt table, under neon lights, vanishing into the pockets of strangers who played their cards better than me. There was one night I'll never forget. I had pawned my Rolex, the one I bought to celebrate my success, for $20,000 in cash. I walked straight into the casino, sat at a baccarat table, and pushed it all in on one hand. I lost. $20,000 gone in the time it takes to blink. I remember walking out of that casino, pockets empty, the city air cold against my skin. I stared at my reflection in a darkened shop window. I didn't see a millionaire. I didn't see a man who had inherited enough to secure a lifetime. I saw a ghost. But ghosts don't sleep. That same night, I opened my laptop and signed into an online poker room. I borrowed money from one shady lender to cover what I owed another, all while convincing myself I was one lucky hand away from making it all back. And then came the worst decision of my life. I put my penthouse up for sale. $6 million on the market. And when it sold, every single cent I swore I'd used to get back on my feet ended up in casinos, poker rooms, and online gambling sites across the world. $6 million, gone in 6 months. And with it, my last safety net vanished. For the first time since my inheritance, I was staring at the reality I had been running from. I wasn't rich anymore. I wasn't untouchable. I was broke. And the people I owed weren't the type to accept excuses. When the penthouse money disappeared, the walls started closing in. The loan sharks stopped smiling. Their late-night calls turned into visits. I remember one night vividly. 2 men waiting outside my building, leaning against a black SUV, their arms crossed. I tried to walk past like I didn't notice them, but they followed me inside. "Where's our money, Daniel?" I stammered something about a deal coming through, about needing just one more week. They didn't respond with words, just a glance at each other, a subtle nod. One of them leaned close and whispered, "We don't give second chances forever." I couldn't breathe until they left. And even then, the air felt poisoned with fear. But fear didn't stop me. It only fueled me. I boarded a plane to Macau with the little I had left. The Monte Carlo of the East. I told myself if I could just win big there, I could pay everyone back, buy myself time, maybe even rebuild. But the casinos in Macau were even colder, harsher than Vegas. I was out of my league, surrounded by billionaires tossing chips the size of my old car payments like they were loose change. I lost $500,000 in a single night. And when I stumbled back to my hotel, numb and shaking, I got an email from the bank. Another loan denied. I was running out of options. So I turned to scams. I started pitching fake startups online, using fancy pitch decks I pulled together with stolen templates. Cryptocurrency platforms, real estate funds, even a so-called tech company that was nothing but buzzwords. I was desperate enough to believe my own lies. For a moment, it worked. People sent me money. Investors wired cash. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could claw my way back. But scammers are sloppy. And when my fake projects collapsed, word spread fast. The calls turned into threats. I wasn't just losing money anymore. I was losing my reputation, my name, my safety. By now, I was gambling with borrowed time. I pawned everything I had left, designer clothes, watches, even the furniture in the rented apartment I'd downgraded to. Every item that once made me feel powerful now felt like a lifeline to another bet, another spin of the wheel. And each loss hollowed me out a little more. The day I knew it was over was the day I wired my last $10,000 into an online slot machine. I spun until the balance hit zero, staring at the flashing animations, the fake coins jingling, as if they were mocking me. I sat there in silence, my laptop screen glowing in the dark. $10 million inherited. Gone. And all I had left were debts I couldn't pay, enemies I couldn't face, and a life I no longer recognized as my own. That was the end of my gambling. Not because I chose to stop, but because I had nothing left to lose. I couldn't face the loan sharks anymore, so I started moving apartments every few weeks. Always a cheaper place, always in cash, always with my head down. I'd sleep on air mattresses, eat ramen out of the pot, and tell myself this was temporary. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This was my new life. The men who used to call me sir in penthouses now barely gave me the time of day. The friends who once begged for an invite to my parties, they didn't answer my calls. My phone, once buzzing with connections, now sat silent on cracked screens. The world had turned its back on me. But the worst part? I still craved it. Even broke, even hunted, even hollowed out, I craved the rush. I'd sit in internet cafes at 3 a.m., scraping together what little I had left to play penny slots online. My fingers twitched when the reels spun, my heart pounded at the smallest win. It wasn't money anymore. It was the addiction, the ritual, the illusion of control. And when I couldn't afford even that, I'd watch streams of other people gambling, squinting at their bets, whispering under my breath, hit, don't stand, as if their luck could somehow feed mine. I wasn't a gambler anymore. I was a shadow of one. One night, in a dingy motel outside of Reno, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. Eyes sunken, skin pale, a beard grown wild. My reflection whispered the truth. I hadn't just lost the money. I'd lost myself. I remember collapsing on the bathroom floor, knees against the tile, whispering promises to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. If I get one more chance, I'll do better. I'll fix this. I'll stop. But no chance came. Only silence. The last time I saw the loan sharks, I didn't run. I didn't make excuses. They came to me in a diner, sat across from me in a cracked vinyl booth while I stirred cold coffee I couldn't pay for. Daniel, one of them said, calm but sharp, your time is up. And for the first time in years, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just nodded. Because what was there left to take? When the money was gone, I thought maybe the silence would save me. That without chips to shuffle or cards to flip, I'd finally be free. But the silence was worse than the losses. Because silence left me alone with my thoughts. With the memories of the man I used to be. The kid who thought inheriting a fortune meant freedom. The young man who thought money meant power. Now, I was just another ghost in the city. I couldn't face the loan sharks anymore, so I started moving apartments every few weeks. Always a cheaper place, always in cash, always with my head down. I'd sleep on air mattresses, eat ramen out of the pot, and tell myself this was temporary. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This was my new life. The men who used to call me sir in penthouses now barely gave me the time of day. The friends who once begged for an invite to my parties, they didn't answer my calls. My phone, once buzzing with connections, now sat silent on cracked screens. The world had turned its back on me. But the worst part? I still craved it. Even broke, even hunted, even hollowed out. I craved the rush. I'd sit in internet cafes at 3 in the morning, scraping together what little I had left to play pen.